Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Warm Intro. All right, so before I bring him out, I want to tell you a little bit about our next guest. He's now creating Manna, which was said by the Financial Times to be Ireland's biggest ever tech firm. He is also a highly entertaining Twitter commentator on all things technology related. So please help me welcome Bobby Healy. Hello, sir.
Good to see you.
Great to have you on the show. How are things?
Nice to be here. Yeah, it's great.
I didn't think you'd show up.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm not going to even say what happened, but
What happened? Give us
there's two of these places. One of them, it doesn't even exist.
Well,
I went to that one, not this one.
Right.
But here I am with my makeup on as well.
And did the other place exist after all, or?
It didn't. No.
Yeah.
No. It's a long story, but it's pretty embarrassing for a tech guy.
All right, so I want to jump right in. Your career began at the age of 16 building games for Nintendo. What was the first game you built?
It was Lunar Lander. It was a demo game that I used to get the gig for Nintendo, and it was a really shitty game on the Spectrum that just you had to fight against gravity and not wipe out. It was really, really terrible game, but technically really good at the time, you know. And still actually very proud. I still have the cassette that code is on, actually,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah,
That's
cassette.
amazing.
Probably a lot of people don't know what a cassette is here, I would say. Yeah.
Wait, so the game is on a cassette?
That one was, yeah.
Okay.
But then the future ones, Nintendo ones, were on cartridges.
Right.
So you would do, the way it worked is the Nintendo would get a license for a big movie to do the game. So I wrote the games for Moonwalker, Michael Jackson's movie,
Wow.
and Schwarzenegger's Running Man, and a bunch of other terrible games. And they would get the license, they would contract out the building of the video game. And so I got the gig to write the video game under contract with a company called Broderbund, which is a huge, you know, producer of games. And back then it was, you know, one guy would write all the code. You would have a graphic artist for a quarter of the time. You'd have a musician for about 2 days, and it was all about the code because it was really difficult to do anything with a computer. And the Nintendo was a terrible platform at the time. So I wrote the game first on the PC. So I'd write the PC game, and then you would port that to different platforms, different video cards, and different, you know, capacity computers or video cards.
But it would start off as a PC game?
Yeah, because
Okay.
you would always start with the best version, and then you would
Yeah.
cut it down, or the other word was bastardize.
Okay.
Yeah, so you would take, you know, on the PC, on a VGA card, 256 colors, you could have 16 frames of animation, right? Because you had 256K of memory, which is not a lot of memory, but back then it was filthy luxury, it was opulence, right? And the Nintendo had 6K of RAM,
Okay.
right? So a frame of Michael Jackson getting shot by a laser would be 16 frames on a PC, and it'd be 2 frames on a Nintendo. So you go like this, you know?
Yeah.
Like the Lego movie or something like
yeah.
that. So it was technically terrible, but you know, there's different. So games are a combination of art, which I have none of, technical, which I'm all of, and then playability, which is this magic thing that only the Japanese perfected. You know, and so my games were all Billboard. Those two games sold, you know, tens of millions of copies around the world, and I was on a salary of 14 grand.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the first lesson in life: don't be just a programmer.
Did you ever take it up with them?
No, it's great. Like I had a ball. It was still the most fun work I've ever done, and the most technically challenging work I've ever done, and very proud of it. And I've never been about the money, never. I'd always fight for more money, but that's never the measure for me, and it wasn't the measure then. I was very proud of the work that I was doing. As I said, I loved it, and the people that I worked with. So we formed our own company. Kind of from the ashes of some of those games, or kind of an opportunity. We got another gig for a game. I can't even think. Treasure Trap. It was this underwater game. It was really technically, really difficult game to do with the hardware that was available at the time. So we got a contract. We got like £90,000, which at the time was, we couldn't count that far. You know, it was like, wow. And of course, we burned through that money in 6 months. We produced the game. We released the game. It was a good game. In fact, my LinkedIn profile, the backdrop is some of the code from that game.
Really? Wow.
For anyone who wants to see. And
fact,
it was a good game, but we ran out of cash, and it was that was my first introduction to the real world.
Right.
You know, because before that I was just a games programmer. I thought I was best things in sliced bread, and there was no, everyone would just come looking to give me money, and that would be that. And I had all these, big hits as well, like, but none of that means anything. And we ran out of cash, and that was, I think I was 18 when that happened,
And what did you think you were going to be when you, when you grew older from there? Like, what was your career vision?
Video games were a joy, but it was clear that wasn't gonna cut it in terms of. It was certainly a career. A lot of people at the time where I was in Ireland, between Ireland and San Francisco, it wasn't really a career, right? Video games, you were still these weirdos doing stuff that no one had ever heard of, and there was no connection between you and the end result. You were like in a dark room, and it wasn't really a career. For a handful of people in the States, it started to evolve as a career. And like John Lasseter, for example, Industrial Light and Magic, Pixar, I mean, he started his career in video games. He was in Broderbund the same day I was there one day. I never met him though. And he was slightly more successful. But that was a weird thing to do as a career, right? But so in the end, I had bought a fast car. I had a loan for it, and I had to earn money quickly, right? So I took this shitty gig in the south of France, and it was a consulting gig. Like 18 years old, pretending to be 26.
I can't imagine a shitty gig in the south of France.
It was terrible work, but it was. From a technology point of view, it was terrible work.
Right.
It was more politics than coding. It was more keep the head low, don't do anything impressive, don't make anyone else look stupid. And the first thing I did when I got there, so this was this really corporate piece of software. I won't tell you who it is, just in case they get horribly insulted. But it's a really big corporate backed business that had gazillions of pounds to produce this awful piece of software on IBM OS2 was at the time. I need a really big consulting firm in to say, this button needs to look like this, and this square is not square enough. And like you would have consensus of people talking about buttons and corners, and back then it was called ergonomics. It was UI. It wasn't UX back then. It was called ergonomics. It was an IBM term, right? And first thing I did was I brought some code that I had from the video games, and I made the log on screen. I made the whole thing bounce down, like dunk, 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 fade in, like put some animation on it. And that was the first time I got myself into trouble in that job. But that job paid well, and I spent a couple of years doing that. And I think that was a pivotal time for me because while I was wasting time there, essentially learning nothing or doing much, I had a good time, but in terms of developing, I did nothing. But I met someone there, an old guy. I thought this really irrelevant old person. He was 50 years old, which is what I am now, right? And I still remember the first time I met him, looking at him, thinking, why am I here talking to you? No connection whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I actually formed the company in the end, like after a few sessions with him. I had this idea, spin-off from the big company I was in, and it was a reasonably good idea. It was basically copying what they had, just doing it properly, doing it well, and in an innovative way, and just, leaving there and then starting up and without revealing who it was. There was regulation around what they were doing, and the US regulator basically created an environment where suddenly overnight they were no longer allowed to monopolize their customers. So they weren't allowed to force their customers to use this particular solution that they had. So suddenly their customers that were pretty unhappy with their product were looking for a solution.
What kind of person, experiences one success and then, push the button on themselves to start over again with a brand new business, and then I'm talking about Car Trawler, and do it once more with Manna. So I want to know a bit more. I want you to tell us a bit more about Manna, but also about like some people would call something like that stressful or crazy. Like how
stressful was trying to get in here in the loop. That was stressful.
Yeah, so tell us like what goes on in someone's mind who's never like
I know exactly, because it's fairly recent, the Manna thing. So Car Trawler is a great business, great team, and Car Trawler, it's 14 years old now. It hasn't needed me for the last 5 or 6 years. It hasn't needed me, right?
Got it.
And I've been there and, really working hard and, building and leading the business. But you know, I knew that I could have stepped out of Car Trawler and very little would have changed, right? Because great team in there. We even put in a new CEO. Everything's going well. So I knew that I
Is this how you planned it as well, or
no, not really, because the idea came and that was it. Then, so first, that's the context, is that, you know, like I'm still, you know, a significant shareholder in Car Trawler, so I should care about its, you know, future, and I do. But it doesn't, if I'm there and not there, it doesn't really matter, right? It's a great team in there, and the business is so big now that one person doesn't make that much of a difference anymore, right? So the idea for Manna came about 3 years ago. I won't too much detail, but it was a really cool idea, and it was fun to think about. And the curiosity, I say this a lot, particularly to young people, you know, what is the key thing you need to test yourself with is, are you a curious person? And when you are interested in something, how far do you go to, you know, to the end of whatever that path is? And I'm extremely curious, right? So, you know, breaking down drones, you know, I ran an RFP process for 15 different companies, engineering companies around the world, to see, not to see if they could build me a drone, but to see what skill set do you need to build a drone? What do these companies look like? What are the skill sets? Like, I didn't even know. Like, what the hell? If you were to build a drone, who would you hire, right? So that was kind of, so could I understand that? And so it was just fun, right, that process. And then I wasn't thinking about running the business yet. I was just thinking about learning about the space.
That's actually a great way to accelerate that, in terms of just setting up a request for proposals and just have other people show you how they would go about it.
And I wasn't intentionally wasting their time, because I was definitely open to doing a deal with them. But in the end, none of them, like, they all came back with ridiculous offers, and also clearly that they didn't have the scale ever to be able to, you know, deliver what I'm going to need, which is hundreds of thousands of drones, right? So in the end, there was no point doing anything with them, and but I did learn a lot from the process. And then alongside that, I found through blogs, actually, these guys in Wales that were kind of doing this as a hobby, right? The, you know, Airbus guys and professors and robotics and those types of people, right? And, you know, so I'd give them a few quid to build me something, right? Again, still not with the idea of a business, but in parallel with that, I was refining the idea of a business. I was writing notes, and I was, you know, changing the notes and reordering things and validating things and getting data to back it up. So I won't say building a plan, not a business plan, but I was refining the idea, you know, the way you would boil some chicken stock, you know. It's like, so it was a process of 6 months, 12 months, where I started to get very excited about it in what could be done. Both the drone was clearly working out, I could clearly get to, I knew that I knew the skill set, and I knew the team that could build these things, or at least do the IP, the engineering to build one, and therefore, you know, we built one, and it was fully autonomous, and it would do delivery 2 kilometers, and it would do everything that we're going to go live with this business for, and cost me hardly anything. So that validated the fact that drones are easy, and they're commodity tech, and, you know, it's actually not a barrier to entry at all, right? And then the plan was so exciting. I mean, one day I'm going to publish the note. I have one big ever note with the whole thing in detail, right? And I will publish it, not right now, but it's really interesting because it actually didn't change much from the first week that I wrote it, you know.
Wow.
I wrote it and it didn't change much. Like, really strange, because a lot of my ideas would be, they'd fall apart for one reason or the other, you know, a leg would fall off or an arm would fall off. And there'd be something that it wouldn't work, right? But this thing stood up to the test of time, and it was clear that it was going to be worth trying, you know. So that was about a year later, and so. And
just a quick question on that. So how many ideas would you burn through before
not too
finding
many,
one that would
I'm pretty
that
quick
would
at
hit?
killing them. I'm pretty quick at killing them.
Okay. You don't get romantic over any idea.
No, don't care. No, I'm not precious about anything, and I don't care about, you know, any objects or success or anything like that. I'm thinking more about the fun. Really, that's the right word. The fun of this new project. That's what I call it. It's a project.
Yeah. Some would call it challenging or stressful, or
you couldn't think of any more difficult than this.
Right.
You couldn't think of any more difficult than this. And maybe people would shy away from that, and people would say, like most people that haven't been lucky as I've been to date would say, no fucking way, this thing is impossible, or I'm not going to stick my head up and get my head shot off, right? But I don't care that much, right? So
I mean,
I'd love to fail.
Yeah.
You know, I'd be proud of it, right? I go to Paul Hayes' thing, the Flounders thing, and brag about failure. There's nothing wrong with it, you know. So it's highly likely that we'll somehow inevitably fail here because it's so difficult, so difficult. So we have hardware, which is, you know, relatively difficult but doable. We have software, which is super easy. We have regulation, right? It's starting to get hard. Then we have political acceptance and, you know, this whole thing about convincing populations and governments and stuff that what we're doing is good for society. And then we have safety, you know, governance and all these things. So we're regulated as an airline, we're regulated as an aircraft manufacturer, and we're regulated essentially with the rules of an airport around security, privacy, access, all that stuff. So you've got all these things, plus we're going to be flying over your house in the summer with a hamburger. So we're going to have some people calling Joe Duffy saying, no thanks, you know, until we deliver to them, and then they're going to absolutely love it. So this business is just a circus of problems to solve.
Right.
And
does everybody know what Manna is?
Oh, we didn't say that, did we?
Do you want to tell us a little bit about
Manna is a drone delivery company. So you're going to order your hamburger on one of the many food delivery platforms, and we will fly it from the restaurant to your house and deliver it from about 10 meters. We lower it down to the ground with a biodegradable linen thread. And we fly at 80 kilometers an hour, so it'll be maximum 2 to 3 minutes delivery time. So it's at first, you know, it's just craziness, but believe me, I'm in this world. It's absolutely going to happen. It's the future of delivery. So
Yeah.
I mean, road delivery makes no sense when you think about it. You know, if you really think about what happens with road delivery, that's ludicrous.
Yeah.
Drones make a lot of sense, and I'm not saying that because I'm biased or anything, but so Alphabet are already doing this. So Alphabet, Google's parent, have a project called Wing. They're already doing it. They've been doing it in Australia for a year. They're launching in the States in the next month in Virginia, and they're in Finland for the last 3 months. So like this thing, they spent 400 million on their project already.
And I think
they
you
believe in it.
You mentioned in an article that I think hospitals are using that technology as well to deliver.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so there's some better use cases than hamburgers, right? So there's a company called Zipline that deliver vaccines in Africa and Rwanda.
Okay.
And then there's a company called Matternet that do the same thing with Swiss Post. So what they're doing is they're flying from hospital to hospital with blood, and that's a really cool use case because it's not about the delivery of blood from hospital to hospital, it's about optimizing the blood supply. So it means that Rhesus negative is in that hospital and they've got loads of it, and Rhesus positive, I don't know the blood types, but 2 different blood types in 2 different hospitals. It means that you can get blood from hospital to hospital within 2 or 3 minutes. So if you have a surgery that needs to happen right away, it means that you have the full blood supply of every hospital in the city rather than just one hospital. So it just means it's just more efficient use of the blood supply. So
Right.
that's actually the use case, which is a terrific one, but it's not volume, you know, and we're after volume, right? And there's, just in the UK alone, there's 700 million takeaway orders a year. 700 million.
Yeah.
And we only need 10% of them and we'd be happy.
Right.
You know, and the size of the market is so big currently for food delivery, it's already enormous. It's a $200 billion industry today, growing to 350 billion by 2030. That's just with organic growth, right? But if you go from what currently is an awful experience, it's a half an hour to an hour delivery time, depending on what day of week, and it's, you know, the guy eats some of your chips, he looks for for a tip, and he might be checking out your wife as well when she answers the door, right? It's awful, and it shouldn't happen, right? It's an invasion to get you your burger and fries. And, you know, we're robots.
Yeah.
We're lovely, right? We don't
no
eat your
emotion,
chips,
no
emotion,
inconsistencies,
and it's
no
magic.
traffic.
You know, you see this thing happening, and it's magic. It flies. Like I said, you see the thing coming because you don't hear it at 80k, and then it stops up there, and you get a notification saying we've arrived. Please accept delivery. And you accept delivery, and then the thing, you know, drops down to 10 meters and hovers there. It lights up the ground with a big LED. It's got these flashing aviation lights on, and then the food comes out of the belly, and it's magical. But it's extremely practical. It's
Right.
like it's 3 minutes maximum time from your McDonald's or whatever it is straight to the table in your back garden.
So building something like that, as you mentioned earlier, it is a circus of things to jump through and problems to solve and things like that. Let's say the normal, let me say it this way, the normal person, when they hear a yes or when they hear a no, or i.e. rejection, I like to think that when you hear a no, A, you hear it probably a lot, and B, you probably think about it completely differently.
Yeah.
So how do you think of the word no?
Actually, I would say I don't have much resilience in that regard, and I take it very personally.
Okay.
When someone says no, they don't say no that often, but
is that because of because they know your story, or is it just because of a different reason?
Okay, yeah. So the last rejection in mass that I've gotten was raising money for this business, and that's I blame it on them not doing their work properly, because it wasn't in the plan, and wasn't in me communicating. It was that they were just too lazy to think about it properly, or too risk averse to want to think about it properly. And those rejections I discarded as irrelevant. Honestly, that's the way I felt. Leaving a room, if they said no, or if they said, well, blah, 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 if they were cold, I came away not impacted, because just knowing that they were...
Right.
Yeah.
They're the ones who didn't do their homework, really.
Maybe not doing their homework, but just they weren't willing to think about it.
Yeah.
And that's it. So that's not really rejection. It's more ignorance than rejection, right? Or an investor that's not really an investor. They're just looking, for established trading businesses, right?
Right. Yeah.
So other than that rejection, the thing that's affected me the most, funny enough, it's a form of rejection, is when staff leave the business. So in Car Trawler or Eland, when you'd have a good guy and they'd leave the business. That one I always took very personally. Mm-hmm. And I feel like being dumped. And each and every person that ever left the business that I led hurt. Yeah. Unless they were assholes.
Why is that?
Just because, like, is it me or is it you? Like, why would you leave? This is great. What are we missing here? Why would you leave?
Right.
Didn't get it. It was hurtful. Still is.
Right.
Is that weird? Probably is. I followed them home.
That's not weird.
Yeah.
So what's one thing, related to that, I suppose, like what's one thing that you've learned the hard way that you're still kind of keeping top of mind today in everything that you do?
That's a good question. I think, well, first of all, I'm not a good learner, right? So I don't take many lessons. I just keep making the same mistakes. I think I've learned that in a positive way. I've learned that, I've limited skill sets myself. I have a very narrow skill set personally, right? I don't know if that's learned the hard way. I recognize that just through brief and painful failures, that then you'd hire someone or you'd find someone or someone else would do whatever and they'd be much better, Like in Car Trawler, my role was CTO, right? And the role of CTO in that case was the face on the business, the technology and product strategy, and the public speaker and all that stuff, right? And then Mike McGurty, who most people don't even know because he's relatively invisible and doesn't put himself out there much, he was the commercial or the financial, he's an accountant, right? So he was the one that put discipline in the business and process and structure, all this stuff. And it was very clear that Car Trawler needed that, not at the start, but middle way, and that I could never do something like that. I couldn't manage my way out of a paper bag, So it's not something that I learned the hard way. It's that I recognized straight away. But yeah, I think that'd be it. Yeah,
makes sense. So you once mentioned that some of your biggest mistakes were derived from listening to people.
Yeah.
Tell us the story about that.
I shouldn't name them now to shame them, but so there was quite a few instances of, right from days in France to Eland to Car Trawler, where people in fairly high places would you know, straight to my face say, there's no way you'll do that. They're not going to work with some pissy little Irish company. And what do you think you're doing? So no, you need to partner with these guys and let them do that for you, and you know, blah, blah, blah. So there's people that were saying, there's no way, you can't do that. It was those people, and the ones that would make you second guess yourself. That's kind of what it boils down to. It's people who would make you second guess yourself, your own conviction. You know, conviction is a very delicate thing, right? And it can be shattered. And if you're not strong enough or ignorant enough to ignore, you know, the naysayers, you could really listen to that, and it would hold you back. And so what I try to tell people, if they ask me for advice, is this is probably the only bit of advice I ever give, actually. It's just ignore everyone that makes you doubt your own convictions. It's far better to be wrong about your own convictions and then learn that than let someone else tell you you're wrong. And you, like, who are they to say? You know, so enjoy yourself trying and pursuing your convictions. Be ready to adapt. You know, hold your convictions strongly and go for it. And definitely, I've been on multiple times, and I know some pretty significant times where people, smart people, have told me I'm crazy and, you know, I shouldn't do this, and they've been wrong and I've been right, you know. And in some cases I've ignored them, in some cases I've listened to them, and where I've listened to them, it's really cost me, you know. Now maybe that's just, no, it's not because I'm brilliant, it's because when you're so deep into something, you know the thing so well, your conviction is probably right. Yeah. So who the hell is someone else that's floating around outside? Who did they, you know, what input did they really have? So, yeah, definitely in the times where I've listened to these very smart people, it's held me back or it's cost me. Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Right, the crowd are getting raucous out there.
What's that?
The crowd are getting rough.
So one of the things that I suppose is related to that is, I guess a broader question is around your mindset. Like, when shit hits the fan, what do you have, and this sounds a bit corny, but do you have a process? Do you be like step one, step two? Do you have a way of processing things? Because because you've done things on such large scales that I like to think that any issues or challenges are only magnified. They're not smaller by any means. Yeah, I mean. So do you have a process of even calming yourself down? Do you need to calm down? Like, how do you walk through
I definitely remain calm, that's for sure. Like, there wouldn't be, I get this, you know, when things go wrong, I get this incredible anxiety about it, but I don't transmit that outside of, you know, what's behind my eyes. I definitely don't, because it's counterproductive. So I am pretty good at remaining calm and slowing everyone down and trying to find out what the facts are and agreeing what the facts are, and then, you know, going through a process to mitigate or figure out a way around. But I haven't had many disasters in my life. I've had a couple of all of my own doing, and stupidly, you know, bringing down the entire car trawler system at 5 in the morning because I made a big, huge change and not being able to unwind it, and taking 3 hours to bring the system back up. Thankfully at 5 in the morning when we were only in Europe, so it didn't matter, no one noticed, right? But that's probably the biggest stupid, you know, disaster I've had. Everything else is, I haven't, you know, maybe I've just been lucky, but I haven't, you know, touch metal. Haven't had too many things go wrong now, but Manna, different story, right? Because we're an airline and an aircraft manufacturer. Yeah, right? Apparently, yeah. So, and we're not going to be flying the same number of flights that Ryanair fly. We're going to be flying 100 or 1,000 times more flights than they fly, you know? So we're going to be, you know, 10, 100, 1,000 times busier than the busiest airline in the world in terms of flights. So the potential is enormous. I mean, the first person killed by a hamburger. Well, probably a lot of people being killed, but just over time, right? But a high velocity hamburger, you know, what a way to go.
Oh man. So right now, how long have you been working on you know? So first of all, Manna's, are we going to see that live this year, hopefully?
Yeah, we're shooting for December in Dublin. Okay. We may or may not make December. I hope we do. it's a tough deadline that we're working towards, but we hope to be there. If not, January.
Perfect.
Yeah, can't tell you where, but in Dublin somewhere.
And how long have you been? How many prototypes or iterations did you have to go through leading up to the launch at last?
We're on, we call it Gen 3.4 now, from 3.3.2. So we're, of major versions 3.
Okay.
And lots of minor versions, tweaks and stuff. And what we have now is valid for the Irish market. So it's a heavy aircraft. It flies in really strong winds. It flies in rain.
Wow.
It's an industrial thing, right? It's a mule. But if you want to, which is what our intent is, to completely replace road delivery. So if we go to a restaurant and we say, well, we can do your delivery for 90% of the time, that's no good to a restaurant, because it means they still need
to cover for the 10.
They need to have drivers ready, available to go. And I spoke to one restaurant owner in Phibsborough, and they have 17 delivery drivers, just one restaurant, 17 delivery drivers for Saturday night, right? And if I can't guarantee him to deliver on Saturday night, irrespective of what the weather is, it means that person still has to have 17 drivers on standby, or he's out of business.
Yep.
So we have to solve for 99% of Irish weather, which is, Beaufort level 7. It's basically 28 knot headwinds. It's windy, right?
Which is a blessing in disguise, because now you can do
fly
anything.
anywhere. Yeah. So it's a really difficult one, but being in Ireland, funnily enough, is really helpful, because the regulator here, it's called the Irish Aviation Authority, are super supportive, very commercially focused themselves, want to liberalise the airspace, and have the support of the government. So we're in a very friendly environment to do that. And it's not because we're an Irish company, it's just because the value of the airspace below 500 feet. So the airspace below 500 feet is not used. No aircraft allowed to fly below 1,000 feet, right? So there's all this airspace that's filled with seagulls and God knows what else, right?
Yeah.
That's very, very valuable, right? So PwC issued a report last year that said that the drone economy in the UK alone adds 650,000 jobs, and 1.9% of UK GDP will be derived from drones in the next 10 years. And if you apply that to any market, multiply it by 7 or 8 for the US market, you're into, millions, if not tens of millions of jobs directly created by enabling that airspace.
Yeah.
Right, so it's a very valuable, very valuable, abundant resource that governments have to improve their economies. And 2% increase in GDP is pretty fucking hard to find with any other initiative, right? So it's going to happen, and we hope to be one of the leaders in the space. It's a pretty big prize.
Yeah, and I think you're something that's probably a classic Bobby Healy is that you can probably find so many different industries to apply this to, I imagine, later down the line.
Using like
what's
food.
already.
I mean, there's loads. Like there's pharmacy, there's local convenience store, there's parcel delivery, there's everything, but nothing. Like everybody eats every day. They don't get a parcel every day.
Right.
They eat multiple times a day. They have a coffee, they have lunch, they have dinner, they have munchies, all sorts of stuff, right? So we want to serve every single one of those cravings.
I love it. So we're going to open it up to questions in just a second. One final question I had for you. So please, if anybody has questions, get them ready now. What's one thing that you've done that you don't think you'll ever repeat again?
Lose my virginity. It was horrible.
All right,
that I'd never do again. One thing bungee jump. Yeah, bungee jump. Yeah, very, very frightening.
Not your thing?
No, not my thing. No. Everyone has to do it once, and there's no need to do that twice. Yeah, that's it. That's the one, not the other one. We can edit that out, I'm sure. Last thing.
Fair enough. Perfect. Who would like to ask the first question then?
I just ask about when you said about outer space.
Do you want to just say your name and what company you're from as well, please?
My name's Manna, I'm an entrepreneur, so I do different things. But I was just curious, when you say about outer space, because obviously this is, big thing at the minute, just because we're talking about it. But when you say going out to space, do you imagine, what do you intend to do out in space? Are you planning to land on Mars? And, obviously some people are talking about creating a civilization on Mars in the future, or, you know what I mean? Or are you just thinking about trips out to space?
Space, I'm not planning on going to space.
No?
No.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about developments.
No. Drone delivery of food.
Sorry, I do.
Yeah, but you could do it in space. It would be great. Just not enough customers.
Less regulation.
Huh?
Less regulation.
Yeah, that's true. No regulation. The problem is the food wouldn't drop because there's no gravity in a lot of places.
You'll have to force the burger down.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much.
Oh, it's not a mic, it's just a recording.
Thank you so much. My name is Gautam, work for Facebook. My question is around the drone innovation. So even in the last kind of 5 years, we've seen drone technology kind of develop at a much faster pace than what it is today.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you view the technology that you use in the hardware to accelerate over a period of, let's say, 2-3 years?
Yeah.
How do you see the cost implications of mass manufacturing the hundreds and thousands, and then how do you?
That's a very good question. So actually, drones are commodity technology now, and all of the components on our drones are off-the-shelf components. And I think the uniqueness about our drone, and the reason we build our own drones, is around reliability. So you won't find a commercially available drone that is safe enough to fly over populated areas. At least, RTE fly drones all the time to do footage of things, but you couldn't do that a million times because you're guaranteed that at least 10 of those drones will fall out of the sky in an uncontrolled way. So it's not about innovation in the tech and capabilities of a drone. It's not even innovation, it's about robustness and hardening of that architecture to make it incredibly safe and resilient. So that's boring, right? But that's when you design an aircraft, which is what a drone is. There's aeronautical engineering around, prop design, prop size, harmonics, noise that it creates, stuff like that. That's fairly, established engineering. You can get those guys in universities and so there's no new science or innovation there that I would say. Where the innovation comes and where things get transformed is in battery technology. So, our battery is relatively off the shelf, but it's sized for our mission, right? So the battery weighs 4.5 kilos, and it's sized to fly into a 28, 29 knot headwind for 2 kilometers and back into the same headwind, because you have to assume that the wind changes direction, and we assume that we carry the full payload out and carry the full payload back and arrive with 30% in the battery, right? So we have to do all that, and so we're on the edge of what's capable with current battery technology. So if there's new battery technology coming on stream soon. It's not in production, it's not in commercial production, but it will be in the next 2 or 3 years, that doubles the energy density of batteries. And what that will let us do is it won't change our envelope, won't change what we achieve, but it'll let us reduce the weight of the battery by half. And that's massive, because when you do that, it means you can either travel further, or you can carry more, or you can fly into heavier winds, or you can take out nearly 30% of your unit cost per delivery. And battery is by far the biggest. Battery is 40% of our unit cost per delivery currently. So, we don't need anything to change, but batteries will change, and they'll just get better. And improvements in battery will flow straight through to our margin. Good question.
I just have a quick one. My name is Natalia. I work at LinkedIn. I'm just curious about the evolution of the idea of a drone delivery service. Was it something that was brewing over a period of time, or did you just sit down one evening and decided this is what I'm
Yeah. A lot of people ask me that, and I know exactly what the answer is. Makes people laugh. So, I learned about drones, buying drones, crashing drones, loads of drones I crashed. And then I said, what, now I bought this new one, the Mavic Air 2 DJI, and it can fly autonomously. There's an API, you can program it to go to different waypoints at different altitudes, different speeds, point the camera at different things, and you can. So I wrote a bit of Java. I wrote a little tiny app called Bag of Chips app, and you click it, and all it did was it sent a drone from my back garden to Libero's chipper in Ballantyre. You know, and it never did delivery, but it hovered over the chipper, waited, and then it came back just to prove to myself. I said, Jesus, you know, Bag of Chips app, this is incredible, right? Nighttime munchies, no questions, one click of the icon and you get a bag of chips 5 minutes later. That's powerful, right? But then I thought, well, there's more chips, right? So I better take this more seriously. But that was the seed of the idea. And then I went down to Libero's. I had loads of conversations with them. They obviously thought I was crazy, but you know, I got to find out about how they think about delivery, how it impacts their business, what are the unit costs, what are their challenges. So I'm there standing at the chipper when there's a queue of people buying their chips and burgers, and I'm there talking to them about, you know, drone delivery. They think I'm crazy, but they entertain me anyway. And so that was the genesis, you know, of the idea. And then like I took it a bit more seriously from then, you know. But that was it. Yeah.
Sorry.
The Blues Brothers here at the front.
Yeah. Gordon Upton. How much money did it take how much investment did it take to bring it from where you started to where you are now in terms of the
So of my own money before I took on investment, less than €1 million. Could have done it a lot cheaper. You know, if I did it again and only did the things I needed to do, could have done it for, I don't know, a few $100,000, I would say. And then it's going to take, before we get live, $4 or $5 million, I would say. That's it.
That's all.
So yeah, but now, once we're live in a small, you know, area, so we'll serve about 20,000-30,000 people with this first, you know, incarnation of it. To roll out Ireland, we'll need about $30 million. To roll out the UK, I'll need about $500 million. You know, and you can extrapolate by market, and most markets we can address about 80% of the population. So that's the way you model it. And the UK, we have great data on the UK market. And just to get to 10% of that market will cost $500 million. So it's going to be a really interesting business if we're successful at getting past the current phase. And then next year is going to be about industrializing it and really getting ready for commercialization and manufacturing. So you'll see at the end of next year to start of the year after, we'll either be still here or we'll be raising hundreds of millions of dollars, you know, maybe more. Yeah.
Bobby, great story. I actually have a load of questions, but I suppose I'll cream
Fire it away. Yeah.
Go for it.
Really curious about you talk about the takeaway with the 17 drivers on a Saturday evening.
Yeah.
Like, how many deliveries can a drone do in, like you talk about the battery capability, the battery capacity, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, if you've got 17 drivers, okay, so
Yeah.
don't know if I'm going to ask this question correctly, but if you look at it, so first and foremost, I'm assuming that this is a subscription model. So I decide to open Dave's Big Burger joint and you're dropping my burgers through drones.
Yeah.
I'm a restaurateur, I know nothing, I'm not a restaurateur by the way, but I don't have the money to buy industrial scale drones.
Yeah, we give them to you if you're a restaurant.
Right, okay, so you guys supply that, so it's a subscription model. I'm obviously paying per drop or whatever the case might be.
No, we charge the consumer, but yeah, I mean, so if you're you know, the local chipper, we'll give you 1 or 2 drones. They'll do 5 deliveries an hour. So
Okay.
one drone will do 5 deliveries an
So
hour.
the 17 drivers reduces to.
Yeah, well, a driver today in Dublin will do 1.8 deliveries per driver hour.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
So
so it's easy to do the maths. Like we'll power a McDonald's, the busiest McDonald's in Ireland at peak. We'll power with about 7 or 8 drones.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I mean, it's totally transformational.
And then, okay, so I'm going to put my insurance hat on because my background is insurance.
Yeah.
How has the insurance world responded to what I think is a genius idea, and it'll take traffic off the road, it'll do all sorts of things for, you know, getting cars and bikes off the road, happy days.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to be run over by a bicycle with a bag full of food in their back.
No.
It's better than having 100 feet above your head, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What has the insurance world said to you? I mean, you're going in as, you know, as as you said, you're going in as an airline.
Correct. So they love us.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you think about it, we're we're licensed and regulated by an aviation regulator.
Yeah.
So they understand risk and they understand safety and mitigating safety, and they understand all these things, and they're essentially stamping us to say, yeah, these guys have the right operating procedures, the right quality control, the right, you know, mitigating systems on their aircraft. They have all these things. So an insurer, right now anyway, we've only been looking for insurance in Ireland, and it's been very easy. Now we'll see how it plays out, right, at scale, and you know, there isn't an option for us to debug, and you know, the old, someone from Facebook, your Facebook, yeah, the old, release quickly, break frequently. Yeah, that's right. That isn't an option with drones, right? Because we're going to be in a school playground with a drone on the ground. That's not an option, right? So actually, insurance is an easy one. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I know Ireland, we are the aviation capital of the world. So
Correct.
There's a huge amount of it going on out there.
That's right, yeah. We lease 90% of the world's aircraft here, you know. Yeah. And we have aviation people on the team, we have aviation people on the board, and we do behave, you know, even though we're only a tiny company, we're less than 20 people, but we have already governance in this business that is very unusual for a tech company. So we have one guy who's not paid a huge amount of money, but he can override our board on, for example, this thing about going live in December. He will be the one at the end of the day that says yes or no. It won't be me or our board saying, let's get live, let's go, you know. It'll be him, and it'll be on him, you know, if we go live too early for safety reasons. Mm-hmm. So governance is massive for an airline and an aircraft manufacturer, although Boeing might argue. Yeah.
Very good. Right.
Yep.
Right. One last question.
They don't do break fast anymore, right?
I think it's like move carefully or something like that these days.
Right. Move quietly.
Move quietly, yeah.
So the next question that I kind of want to ask is, eventually once, you know, it operates, and 2 years down the line, when it is no longer a barrier for other competitors to enter into the space, do you envision Manna to be similar to, let's say, the delivery operations of today? So for example, Uber Eats versus Deliveroo. Do you see that's the way it's going to evolve? So you have Amazon or Google coming into, and then as other kind of competitors in the space, and then would then the operations, or would then the success would basically depend on partnerships going forward? How does that? How do you?
Yeah, that's very insightful, and you almost answered it at the end. So we're B2B play, so Uber, Amazon, Alphabet, Wing, they're all B2C plays, so they all only have their own demand. So if you're McDonald's or if you're Supermax, right, you need all of the demand in your catchment area. So you cannot have one player serving you demand and logistics drone delivery, because there's only room for one drone fleet at a restaurant. You can't have more than one. It doesn't work, right? So therefore, we plan to power the partnership, the restaurant with delivery, so give them the logistics stack, and then they decide, the restaurant decides who they want to distribute through. So in their direct ordering app, you know, we did a deal with Flip Dish, you might have seen that. So that's for the restaurant direct, but that restaurant can then say they'll work with Just Eat, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, but all of those guys use our drone fleet through API. There isn't a possible way where, you know, that one restaurant has multiple drone operators flying aircraft. It just wouldn't work. So it actually has to be, the restaurant essentially is a metaphor for the airport. And that's kind of the way to think about it. So therefore they run air traffic control, we run it on their behalf. So it only works if you have one drone fleet. So we're unique. Nobody else, neither Amazon nor Uber nor, you know, Wing, they're the only other three that are serious about drones. None of them are strategically aligned with the restaurant chains and dark kitchens. We're the only ones that are. And it's very important, you know, not just have a great product, but to be, you know, strategically aligned with your critical partner base.
Perfect.
Can I ask one more?
Yeah.
Go for it.
size of the seagulls now in Dublin, do you think that'll be a problem if they get a whiff of the food?
Yeah, well, there's a
Stay whip in, like, so do you think when it's in, I know it goes 80 miles an hour, but when it's in hover mode, and then things will learn, that's hovering over that house every night.
Yeah.
They'll learn and go at it.
Yeah, they'll learn quickly.
Be a smell coming out of the drones, or?
Yeah, no, well, so the food travels inside the drone. It's sealed in a sealed cargo area, bay area, and it gets lowered down. So the time from the food to leave the aircraft to be on the ground is 4.5 seconds, right? Now, yes, a seagull can get that, but we only descend to deliver when you accept delivery. So we're hovering, and you have to accept delivery, right? So you're there before we descend and leave the food. So see, that's not going to be a problem for the seagull. The problem won't be seagulls. The problem will be potentially, we don't think so, but the way to think about it is birds of prey. So if you fly over a nest with eggs in it belonging to a bird of prey, some of them will attack you. But that's not going to end well for the bird of prey. Now, that's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's a good thing in that they can cause us to crash and potentially hurt somebody underneath. Even though we carry 2 parachutes and probably later on airbags, you still don't want to be falling out of the sky. But it's also not good that you're going to interfere with wildlife. So that's one that we're going to just have to learn as we go. I'm not worried about seagulls. I'm worried about non-rat birds. Yeah, pigeons as well.
You have a list of them.
Yeah, I do. Birds I care about, not so much. Yeah.
So we've seen a huge change in the retail world. I mean, you know, Amazon and eBay, all these things have taken over. More and more warehouses are popping up down the country that are filled full of stuff that we all buy online.
Yeah.
Do you see with the evolution of time and drone deliveries and stuff like that, do you see an awful lot more of these restaurants, takeaway shops entering into the likes of industrial parks?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the future.
You know, the shop fronts are going to disappear, and nobody's going to want to jump in a car and go up the road and grab a bag of chips.
Totally.
And get it dropped off, right?
Yeah, I think there's a stratosphere there of restaurants that are experiences that people want to go to and enjoy, and then the other 99%, people just want the food, right? And just look what happened in China. Meituan, rolled out a 20-minute delivery promise. It emptied the restaurants on Monday to Thursday in every Chinese city that they operated in. Look, Jamie Oliver called out food delivery platforms as the reason, their restaurant chain failed. And you can see, if you look at the data, that once you go below 30 minutes of delivery time, the user changes their behavior. And if we go, like the reason Amazon is so successful and the reason they push so hard, like Amazon is a logistics company, the reason they push so hard to optimize delivery and continually go for next day delivery, same day delivery, 30 minutes delivery, all this stuff, the reason they do that is not because they're competing with anyone else or they're trying to reduce their costs, is because it modifies behavior and it kills retail. And Amazon in the US are still only 9% of retail, right? So actually what you do is you first modify behavior, and you do that at any cost, and then you reap the reward over the long term. And if you think about going to 2 to 3 minute delivery time of instant gratification items like food, snacks, whatever it is, you change behavior totally. So people will, instead of buying large, infrequent things, they're going to buy many frequent but smaller things. So convenience shopping, your local convenience store, certainly your local restaurant, none of them will be profitable in their current models. They'll move to dark kitchens for the restaurants, and convenience stores will move to a different format as well. But the key enabler is efficient and scalable logistics. And you can't do that with humans. There's just no way to do that with humans. There's not enough room on the roads. Humans are, by their nature, the lower cost humans tend to be younger, and they don't want to work during peak hours. They're out at peak hours, right? So it's just a misbalance. And also there's a lot of unrest and governmental dissatisfaction with the way gig economies are being operated around casual labor, gig economy stuff. So everything is broken with the current model, both retail, food, delivery, everything doesn't work. So Amazon are right about their strategy, as are Alphabet, that the only solution to it is robotics, is autonomous. And in the end, I get asked, you know, frequently about jobs and, you know, all that stuff. Yes, we're going to kill a lot of delivery jobs, right? But fun fact, 180 delivery cyclists in Amsterdam were carried by ambulance to hospital last year, right? So, but it's a bad idea to put cyclists, motorbikes and cars on the road delivering food. It's a bad use of the precious resource that is the road. So, you know, we're going for a much better world with this thing. You know, all the companies are involved in it. And one of the collateral damage to that is the retail food footprint. Yeah.
One other question, and I'm an entrepreneur myself.
Yep, good.
Heading up a business here out of Dublin. I always get asked the question, who would be your target to sell to? So if you were to look, if I was to ask you the question, say, Bobby, look, as you said, Alphabet have pumped $400 million into what they're doing with drone technology around deliveries. I mean, do you think they'll buy you, or do you think it could be somebody totally off?
Yeah.
Like could be an airline.
Yeah, this one I'm not building to sell. This one I'm building to IPO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Interesting. And then last question, then I'll be quiet because I could ask questions all night.
No problem.
So you look.
I'm sure I'll see you on LinkedIn later on.
Probably. You see you walk the streets of Dublin, and every second doorway is some form of a food place.
Yeah.
So we've just been talking about dark kitchens and people moving off the street.
Yeah.
What could we, and here's an idea for people, what can we do with all that retail space? Is it going to become housing? Is it, are streets going to become these really boring places? Because there's a certain vibrancy about it. Like you walk through,
turn them into nice wine bars.
Yeah, Temple Bar is a bad example, but there's...
Food retail now is a restaurant as much an experience as it is as a function of eating, right? So people want experiences, they'll eat anyway. They'll eat, great food or awful food, whatever it is that they like to eat. It'd be better to make experiences for people that maybe combines that with food, or, that retail footprint has to eventually evolve into something that's profitable, right? Because that's the way things work. And restaurant, even in the good times, is not a great business to be in, right? It's a hard business to scale. It's a low margin business, and any headwind to that just, weeds out all the weaker business. It just doesn't work. So, what people really want are experiences, and there's plenty of experiences that can be created and occupy those spaces. But certainly for the next 10 years, it's going to be, so just look, if you ever want to know what the future looks like, go to China, right? I spent a lot of time in China, and they are conservatively, 5 years, probably more like, 7, 8 years in terms of societal adoption of technology evolved, right? You walk along a new city in China that was built like 3 months before, and 50 million people in it, and there are no big restaurants there. There's giant big shopping malls, because that's an experience, and they combine that with food and entertainment and all this stuff. And retail still thrives there because they figured out that actually shopping mall is a place to be, so they've changed the whole thing, or they started with a fresh base, right? Because they're allowed to just knock down cities and rebuild them. But if you look there, you'll see the way behavior will be in Europe or United States in 5 to 10 years. And I can tell you that it is all, like, they order from Meituan. Meituan is this giant delivery company in China, absolutely giant. And they order toothpaste, they'll order toilet roll, they'll order, half a slice pan. They don't need slice pans, but they, the point being, they order on a super granular level, with huge frequency. And that's what human cyclists, that works in China because cost of labor is next to nothing, and insurance isn't an issue, right? Because just scoop him up and throw him in the bin when he gets hurt, Yeah, but what's true, and it's consistent across cultures, is behavior, consumption behavior is identical across cultures. So if you provide a clear path to commercialize anything, behavior adapts in the same way. And so for me, the way I look at that is I look at Amazon on that side and I look at Meituan on this side, and you look at the way behavior has changed because they've shrunk the delivery time. And their holy grail has been 20 minutes to 30 minutes we're going to be 2 to 3 minutes. Just think about the change in behavior that's going to drive. You know, it's just going to totally change the world. Yeah.
Bobby, we could be here all night, but I just wanted to thank you for your time today. It was a great episode. Thanks for telling us your story.
Thank you.
And guys, big round of applause for Bobby.
Big blessings.
And we'll see you on the next episode of The Warm Intro.